jealous narcissistic sister attempted to seduce my fiancé right before our wedding. She was caught on camera and disowned by our parents. This story is about my older sister L9F, who could never accept my happiness, believing I was living a life I didn't deserve. She's divorced and living with my parents because she has no job. Elle dropped out of college for her wealthy boyfriend, who later divorced her after seeing her true nature. Growing up, our relationship was rocky at best. She was always the pretty and smart one, constantly full of herself. My parents idolized her and took her side, leaving me to feel inadequate. Everyone praised her beauty while I was ignored. It stung, and Elle used that to torment me, saying no one liked me. Those digs crushed my self-esteem. My parents overlooked my feelings because she always met their expectations. So I emotionally distanced myself as a teen. She had friends over when my parents were gone, and they would invade my space. Once they even ruined a project of mine, and I nearly failed. I wanted to tell my mom, but Elle threatened to share embarrassing pictures of me. And at 14, I was terrified. She never owned up to her actions, telling my parents was useless since they wouldn't listen anyway. She pulled plenty of stunts that made me resent her. Mom never defended me, though Dad occasionally called her out. Once, Elle used my phone to send humiliating pictures to my friends because I had complained to Dad about her. She even spilled coffee on my prom dress and played the victim, crying and claiming it was an accident. After that, I stopped confiding in anyone. Her hatred for me seemed endless, but later I realized it wasn't about me. Elle was a narcissist. She cheated on every guy she dated and was, frankly, a gold digger. Even her ex is still my friend, which says a lot. As a teen, she was awful, and as an adult, nothing changed. My parents were to blame for enabling her behavior. Things began improving for me after school. I worked hard, got into my dream college, and landed a great job. Eventually, I met the love of my life, Liam, at a work conference. He was everything I wanted: kind, smart, and handsome. We connected instantly and began dating within months. We traveled often and grew closer. Liam introduced me to his family early on, but I delayed introducing him to mine because of Elle. I feared she'd sabotage everything. She always got the best as a child, and now that my life was better than hers, I knew she wouldn't handle it well, especially regarding my relationship. However, I couldn't stall forever. Liam grew curious about why I was hesitant to introduce him to my family. After a year and a half, I finally told my dad about him. Dad was thrilled I had found someone so good for me and invited us over for dinner. While I was excited, I was also stressed, knowing Elle might try something. Liam was aware of my family dynamics, but I still gave him a detailed warning about Elle. He assured me he'd handle it. A few days later, I made the call to Dad. I got a call from Elle, and it caught me off guard since she had never called me before. She started asking about Liam and when I'd be visiting home, but it felt like she was more interested in him than anything else. I assume Mum must have told her about Liam and how serious we are. Now, Elle's acting all friendly, but I knew her intentions weren't pure. I started worrying if it was a good idea to let her meet Liam. Her behavior made me consider inviting my parents to my place, instead as a safer alternative. Update 1. Thanks for all the great advice. A few of you asked for more details about Elle, so here's the backstory. After her divorce, my parents, especially Dad, began seeing her differently. Elle used to excel academically, but once she entered college, her focus shifted entirely to her looks and lifestyle. She met this rich guy, Nathan, and started dating him, abandoning her studies. At the time, I was preparing for college entrance exams during my final year of school. Elle constantly told me I'd never make it to my dream college. But I did, and for the first time, my parents genuinely validated me. They were proud and even threw a celebration party for my achievement. Elle couldn't handle the attention being on me, so she hijacked the event by announcing her engagement to Nathan. You could tell from Nathan's face he had no idea about it, but Elle succeeded in stealing the spotlight. Suddenly, everyone was interested in Nathan, the wealthy fiancé. Elle often flaunted the expensive gifts he gave her and mocked me, saying I'd never marry a rich man because I was too plain. She loved making me feel worthless. I clapped back, saying I didn't need to marry for money and could support myself, unlike her. She was the most self-centered person I'd ever known. A week after the announcement, they got engaged. I had already left for college and didn't attend. During my time in college, I didn't interact with Elle, coming home for holidays. Felt refreshing since she was living with Nathan. Even then, she and Nathan were often vacationing in luxurious places. After a year of dating, they had a grand wedding, mostly funded by Nathan. Dad pitched in as a courtesy since Elle wasn't earning. Their marriage didn't last long. 3 years later, they divorced. Nathan confided in me, explaining the split. Elle didn't want kids, but Nathan was ready to start a family. He said she never disclosed her stance and dodged the conversation for years. He also mentioned her drinking, partying and flirting with other men, saying she only married him for his money and lacked emotional connection. I wondered how he missed the red flags for so long. Nathan even showed me videos of Elle out at bars, letting men touch her inappropriately without stopping them. He was better off without her. My parents, however, sided with Elle, blaming Nathan for pressuring her about kids and refusing to acknowledge her faults. After the divorce, Elle moved back in with my parents. With no degree or work experience, she was completely dependent on them. She had dropped out of college for Nathan and 5 years later had nothing to show for it. She pretended to be traumatized by the divorce, but the truth was, she seemed thrilled to be free. Within weeks, she was back to her old habits: clubbing, casual hookups, and flaky behavior. Her Instagram stories were a clear window into her lifestyle, constant dates and drama. 2 years into my career, I finally got my dream job with great pay. My parents were ecstatic, especially Dad, when I visited home to share the news. Dad couldn't stop expressing how proud he was of me. We were enjoying dinner when Elle stumbled in, partially drunk. Dad, clearly annoyed, criticized her choices, saying she should have focused on her education instead of chasing Nathan. He even mentioned my salary compared to Elle still depending on them financially. Mom tried to intervene, asking Dad to stop, but Elle exploded, slamming the door. That was the moment Dad realized how spoiled she had become. He told Mom to make Elle get her act together and stop leeching off them. I think Elle overheard, because later, she barged into my room and sneered that no matter how much money I made, I could never measure up to her. She even marked my appearance, pointing out my belly fat and chubby cheeks. As a teen, her words would have crushed me, but now I just laughed. I told her I had no desire to be like her, and that maybe she should work on her attitude. That set her off completely. She screamed at me to leave the house. I calmly reminded her it was our parents' home, not hers, so she had no authority. The next day, as I packed to leave, I found 2 of my dresses deliberately slashed. It was obvious Elle had done it. I showed my parents, and Dad was furious. He called Elle downstairs, but Mom immediately tried to excuse her behavior, saying Elle was in shock and didn't know what she was doing. Dad wasn't having it. He stormed at Elle, wanting her to straighten out her life because he wouldn't keep supporting her or tolerating her narcissism. Elle, of course, blamed me for everything. Since then, she's been relentlessly hostile. But I didn't care until her anger turned toward my boyfriend. After a lot of thought and discussing it with Liam, I decided to visit my parents with him. Avoiding Elle wouldn't solve anything, and my friends suggested it was better to see how Liam handled the situation than live in fear of what might happen. When we arrived, Elle was practically throwing herself at him, while Liam greeted my parents. She made a big show of hugging him, as if they were old friends. It was embarrassing to watch. She'd dyed her blonde hair jet black, dressed to the nines, and had her nails and hair done, as though she was the one meeting him for a date. During dinner, she forced her way into every conversation. When I asked her to move so I could sit beside Liam, she gave me a nasty look but complied. Throughout the meal, she kept interrogating Liam about his hobbies and interests, claiming she liked the same things even if it was obvious she didn't. She even joked about how compatible they were and winked at me as if it were harmless. But her intentions were crystal clear. Liam was visibly uncomfortable, redirecting the conversation to my parents whenever possible. After dinner, I went to shower, leaving Liam alone for a bit. That's when Elle struck again. She walked in, pretending she'd lost her phone, and asked Liam to call her number. He obliged, only realizing later it was a ploy to get his number. Liam also told me she tried to gain his sympathy by sharing a sob story about her divorce and alleged emotional struggles. To To make it worse, Mom chimed in, badmouthing Nathan to paint Elle as the victim. Liam eventually suggested we take a walk so I could show him the neighborhood. Before I could answer, Elle jumped in, saying, "Sure." Liam gave her a surprised look and said he wanted to spend time alone with me. Elle's face flushed with embarrassment, and she quickly retreated to her room. It's been only a few days since that visit, and I'm already anticipating Elle pulling some new stunt to lure Liam. I can't lie, it scares me. But at the same time, I trust my man and want to see how he handles her advances. Update 2. Hello, everyone. Big news, I'm engaged. Liam proposed to me last month on a trip. He got down on one knee with the most beautiful ring, and I couldn't stop smiling. Of course, after that visit to my parents, Elle didn't back down. She tried her best to manipulate Liam. She started texting him, casually asking how he was doing. Liam is a cat lover. So Elle bombarded his inbox with cute cat videos, even though she never cared for cats before. After learning about Liam's love for them, she went so far as to get a cat herself, recording videos and sending them his way. At first, Liam showed me her messages over-the-top greetings, pretending to care about his work and trying to seem sweet. But after a while, he stopped mentioning her texts. I thought she had finally moved on, and we also stopped discussing her. We had plenty of other things to focus on, like work and planning for our future. One day, while scrolling through social media, I noticed that Elle had added herself to Liam's account. She was liking and commenting on all his posts, even digging up old ones from years ago to leave silly emojis and remarks. It gave me a bad feeling. Curious, I decided to check his phone, and there they were, Elle's unread texts. They were weird and desperate, still trying to grab Liam's attention. Then I saw the call logs, a few missed calls, and one answered at 3 a.m. My stomach dropped. Feeling anxious, I confronted Liam. At first, he seemed nervous but stayed calm. He admitted he had been ignoring her texts because he didn't want to bring her up and stress me out. When I asked about the late-night call, he explained that Elle had called him, sounding upset, and he'd assumed it was an emergency. She started rambling about her trauma with Nathan and needing someone to talk to. Liam told her to speak to her parents and firmly stated it was inappropriate to call him so late. He also told her she should have come to me first. Though his response reassured me, I couldn't shake my frustration. I told him that keeping this from me wasn't okay and that it was making me doubt him. He apologized and promised he'd never let her antics come between us. He assured me that I had nothing to worry about. Elle's tricks wouldn't work on him. Still, I've read too many stories about people falling for this kind of manipulation, despite their best intentions. I told Liam that the next time Elle called, he needed to hand the phone over to me. I wanted to catch her red-handed and put an end to her nonsense. One night, her call came through again, and Liam woke me up. I answered. When Elle heard my voice, she went silent, then mumbled that she'd dialed by mistake before hanging up. The next day, I called her repeatedly to confront her, but she ignored every call. It's clear she knows she's been caught, but I'm not letting this go. I texted Elle from Liam's phone, saying it was me and telling her not to call or text him unnecessarily, especially at odd hours. I made it clear that if there was anything urgent, she should contact me instead of him. After that, she stopped texting and I finally felt some relief, thinking she was out of our lives for good. When Liam proposed, I sent a picture of the ring to my dad. He must have shown it to Mom and Elle because soon after, she started her stalking games again. The texts and ridiculous videos resumed. I was so fed up. As soon as Liam informed me, I called Elle and unleashed all the anger I'd been suppressing. I yelled at her to stop with her pathetic tactics and get a life. She remained silent for most of the call, but little did I know, she wasn't going to back down. The moment I hung up, Mom called me, furious. She screamed at me for insulting Elle, apparently. Elle had twisted the story, telling Mom I accused her of stealing my fiancé. Mom scolded me, saying my cruelty had given Elle panic attacks and asked why. I couldn't be more considerate toward my sister who was struggling with depression after her divorce. That was laughable. Elle had never been depressed about her divorce. I hung up on Mom and told Dad that if they continued enabling Elle, I'd cut them out of my life completely. I couldn't keep being a pawn in Elle's twisted games. Update 3. I never imagined Elle would stoop this low. She had made my life miserable for years. But trying to seduce my fiancé before our wedding was a new low. Bullying and body shaming me was one thing, but this, it was hard to accept. As we were planning our wedding, I wasn't speaking to Mum after our last confrontation. She eventually called to apologize for yelling at me, saying she'd been scared because Elle had panic attacks. Later, a cousin told me Elle was spreading lies about me, claiming I accused her of stealing Liam and didn't deserve him. According to Elle, she was the gorgeous one and should have everything good in life, including Liam. I told Mum about this, but she dismissed it, saying I should forget Elle and focus on my wedding. Elle had been keeping a low profile leading up to the big day, and I thought she might stay out of trouble. On the day of the wedding, while getting ready at the venue, I got a call from Liam's best friend asking me to come to his room with my parents. I joked that Liam wasn't supposed to see me before the ceremony, but his tone was serious. He insisted there was an urgent matter to address. Heart pounding, I rushed to Liam's room with my parents. Liam was lying shirtless, slipping in and out of consciousness, while his groomsmen explained what had happened. Elle had gone to his room with a drink and insisted he take it. He refused, but she forced it on him. As he grew dizzy, Elle started undressing herself and rubbing against him. One of Liam's friends had witnessed the entire scene and even recorded it. When Elle realized she'd been caught, she pretended they were making out, covered herself and walked out, smirking at his friend and warning him not to tell anyone. When we arrived, Liam was still dazed. The drink had been spiked, leaving him barely coherent. Mum slapped Elle hard, furious at her for the disgusting act. My parents kicked her out of the venue, immediately, and instructed security not to let her back in. Elle had clearly wanted to create a scandal, hoping I'd call off the wedding. A doctor confirmed that Liam had been drugged. Despite the chaos, we went ahead with the ceremony. During his vows, Liam added a promise to protect our relationship from anyone trying to come between us, which made the moment even more meaningful. After our honeymoon, my parents visited us and apologized to Liam for everything Elle had done. Dad assured us she was out of our lives. He had kicked her out of their house and told her to fend for herself. Even now, I'm still shaken by the incident. My wedding was so close to being ruined, and if it weren't for Liam's friend, Elle might have succeeded.